Hi, my name is Eda320, and I really like tanks. So much so, in fact, that I've decided to embark on a journey across the internet and gaming world alike to find some of the wackiest, coolest, and best made tanks in video games. I'll be looking at everything from the plausibly realistic to the downright insane. The Scorpion is regarded in the Halo Wiki as a main battle tank. However, I don't think it is. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, stick around and listen up, because this is a Tank Enthusiast Reacts to Tanks in Video Games. On today's episode, we are going to be looking at Halo, particularly the Scorpion tank from Halo. And as you may notice, first things to address, I have a complete brand new camera setup. Thank you to that one guy who really let me know in the comments how much he appreciated my old webcam. I really like when people just nail home how scuffed my setup is, or well, was. If you'd like to see my actual live unveiling of this brand new camera setup, I did so on my second channel, Eda320 Live, where I go live all the time and stream pretty much whatever I want. We're currently in the middle of a Metro playthrough for the entire Metro series, just finished Metro 2033, so if you want to see a little bit more of me outside of a tankery context and just sort of me playing games and doing what I think is a lot of fun, interacting with the audience, go check me out on my live stream channel. Also, go check me out on my podcast. I do hold a podcast with Nomad Prod and Big Fish 821. So go check that stuff out. Join my Discord, subscribe, hit the like button, do all that fun YouTube stuff. If you want to keep me supported and keep me being able to do what I love to do, reacting to tanks and talking about tanks, please show your support, guys. It really seriously means a lot. And so far, it's allowed me to purchase this new camera. So hey, we're already doing pretty good. What better way to exercise this brand new camera than by doing another video format that involves my face looking at a screen and getting reactions? Because that's what you guys like. That's what you guys want. You guys want to see somebody reacting. So by God, I'm going to give it to you. And today we're going to be reacting to the Scorpion tank from Halo. I actually already have a video talking about the tank in Halo Infinite, so funny enough, you might see me repeat some things here because I have looked at the Scorpion in detail before, and I'm not the only one. I'd like to give a quick shout out to Spookston, who is a YouTube channel that I actually take a lot of inspiration from, and specifically did take inspiration for this series from, as well as many other sources, but he did a series reacting to a lot of different wacky tanks from video games in particular, and he has made a video reacting to the Scorpion, so he's going to make some points that maybe I won't hear, or maybe we might overlap. Either way, I suggest you check out his video too, because it is really good. There are a lot of interesting lessons we can take from the Scorpion in a real life context. Go ahead and pull up the footage here. Funny how I'm starting all this and I don't even have the footage pulled up. That's not how a reaction video works. You're supposed to have the video. Oh, get nice and comfy. Get nice and comfy. This is, you know, this is a special occasion. This is reacting to tanks. We love reacting to tanks.
Noble 1, this is Noble Actual. Noble 1, go ahead. We need that base taken out, son. What's your status? Still outside. Thermal on the interior shows standing room only. We're gonna have to thin them out or we'll be way too popular. Copy that, Noble 1. Holland out. We got a job to do, so let's stay focused and get it done. 6, are you in position?
Affirmative.
Good.
My character looks so badass.
Might be a Scorpion that's still operational. 6. Take a look.
And right away we are greeted with the iconic Scorpion design. The large hull shape with the tiny turret on top that reaches over like a scorpion's tail. I think that's very much the vibe they were going for. Now in the GTA 5 reaction, we looked at the Rhino tank. We had a lot of fun discussing what tank the Rhino might actually be based off of. Now the Scorpion being a futuristic tank, isn't necessarily held down by needing to be based on anything specific, which has allowed them to make something fairly unique. And actually, fairly unique. It's a really, really unique tank design. In fact, even within fictional video game, movie, whatever futuristic tank designs, I think the Scorpion is one of the most iconic designs. It just looks so distinct. However, that being said, I can pull some small details that this tank kind of reminds me of. Namely, and this might sound weird at first, but stay with me, the AMX-13. AMX-13 is a French Cold War era that was very famous for having a oscillating turret design. Rather than having just a fixed turret that sits on a turret ring, and then to achieve elevation and depression, you just have your gun barrel that sticks out with a mantlet. Instead, your turret is split into two pieces. You have your turret ring, which is a lower piece, and then the upper bit is a separate piece that the entire piece rotates up and down on a trunnion. So basically, rather than just the gun elevating up and down, the entire turret is given a chance to rotate up and down. The advantage to something like this is that your gunners can sit inside the turret and always be level with the gun. There is typically a bit of a disconnect in that you're a gunner sitting in your position and next to you the gun is elevating up and down. Versus if the entire turret is up and down, then you are constantly in line with the cannon barrel, which also makes it easier for loading, because it means that as a loader you don't have to worry about that breech moving up and down and trying to line a shell up with it. It makes it easier to fit those types of tanks with auto loader systems. So pretty common you'll find the AMX and other tanks with oscillating turrets do typically use an auto loading system. Now, why the hell did I just go on that entire spiel? Why does any of that matter? Well, because I highly suspect that the Scorpion has an oscillating turret, and it makes sense. We'll get into some other pieces of this design here in a second, but this tank actually kind of ticks all the boxes for a tank that should have an oscillating turret. So next to the Scorpion's very iconic and recognizable turret is probably also its very unique quad track design. Now, straight off the top of my head, there are not very many tanks at all that I can think of that have 4 sets of tracks, except for the Object 279, which is by far the most widely known tank that has had quad tracks. But even in that sense, it's not quad tracks like how the Scorpion does it with 4 independently hinged sets of tracks. There is not a single tank that has ever existed that I know of that has had a system like this. This is purely unique to the Scorpion. Now, as interesting of a concept as this is, I think there is a reason why we've never done it in real life, because I have no clue how they would work. Every set of tracks, every piece of running gear needs to have a couple of very basic things: road wheels, idler wheels, and sprockets. Return rollers are optional depending on your type of track, but nowadays we typically tend to favor having return rollers. Where we fall flat with the Scorpion track type is in the sprocket in particular. The sprocket is particularly the piece of a tank's running gear that receives power. When you put your foot on the gas in a tank, the only wheel that turns is the sprocket. The road wheels don't receive any power. Idler wheel doesn't receive any power. Now, throughout history, there have been some exceptions to this rule, but generally speaking, in a modern tanking context, the sprocket is where you get your power. And so the sprocket needs to have a direct connection to the transmission. Doing this on 4 individual, independent sets of tracks, admittedly, I'm not a mechanic, but unless you're telling me that this tank has 2 or 4 transmissions, the engine's mounted in the back, so how do the front tracks connect up to that? Is there a drivetrain that goes through the hull, maybe like a Sherman or something? There are a lot of logistical, mechanical, and engineering issues that come into play when you have 4 independently hinged sets of tracks. Also, to play off of what Spookston mentions about this, 4 independently hinged sets of tracks that are hinged on one point. There is only one spot where these tracks connect to the hull, and they hinge on that one spot. You know, albeit I'm not there in front of this tank right now, but those tracks look very wide. Incredibly wide for a tank. So that means that they're extremely heavy. Tracks are heavy. For context on the Sherman, HVSS provided the Sherman with a wider track, actually quite literally double the track. They just took another set of links, threw it on there. Just adding that extra second set of tracks to each side increased the weight of the tank by a full ton each. So tracks are heavy, and having these 4 hinged units, it's a very sensitive connection. You definitely have moving parts in there delivering power to those tracks. seems extremely fragile. It seems like a massive reliability weak point. These tracks are exceptionally wide, exceptionally heavy, and I can't imagine a system like this ever existing anytime soon in the real world. But again, this is the 2500s, so I mean, who knows what kind of technical wizardry they've got going here. Speaking of vertical volute spring suspension VVSS, this is the reason why I wanted to look at the Halo Reach version of the Scorpion in particular, because I knew about this. VVSS is a vertical volute spring suspension system pioneered in the 1930s by a gentleman named Harry Knox. So just to make sure we're all on the same page here, this tank from the 2550s, I believe, 500 years in the future from today, is using a suspension system from the 1940s. You see what I mean? You see where maybe we have problems here? As if the weight of these 4 independent sets of tracks wasn't already enough of a concern, you're dropping all of this weight on what is a very, very outdated suspension system by the standards of this time period. In fact, VVSS is so out of date that it was out of date even in World War II. And they switched over to the Easy 8 program, upgraded to HVSS. Basically, instead of vertical springs, they were horizontal springs. Wow, funny how that works. So, on one hand, this is an incredibly stupid choice for a suspension system for this set of tracks. And also, the volute spring suspension is a modular bogie suspension system. All of the internals of the suspension are kept in a unit that can be removed and put on, which means you need to have a hull to bolt those blocks onto. I have no clue how this VVSS suspension is sitting on this tank. And as much as I could give a pass before to, oh, this is the future and maybe they've got some kind of advanced technology that makes this work, I can't really give that excuse here because this is a suspension system from the 1930s. On the other hand, despite this being incredibly cursed, I am really, really happy to see that the developers of the game clearly looked at real suspension systems and took inspiration from history. It's just a fun little Easter egg, almost unintentional Easter egg for the enthusiast. You know, it's like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's That's an incredibly bad idea. That is a horrendous idea. Hull-mounted, independently rotating machine gun position. Such things have existed in the past. However, even in real life and even back in World War II, they were done better than this. It's a turret. It's a second turret on the tank. We've seen things like this before on Crusaders, early Crusader models, British Crusader tanks, and on the Canadian Ram-built tank as well. All the Russians did it too. I can instantly think of the T-35, T-28 tanks. As you may notice by whatever reference photos I probably just popped up, none of them are completely open to the elements. They are turrets, and thus they have turret walls and a roof and a hatch. It's not just completely open to the elements. I would imagine that every time this tank fires, whoever's in that position probably gets deafened, blinded. You can probably feel the heat radiating off the barrel after successive shots, especially if the tank is aiming above him and down slightly, and that barrel is like right above his head. It's a horrible position. It's a horrendous spot. Never mind the fact that the idea of those independently rotating turrets to replace a bomb machine gun went away. That concept went away because even the British and everyone who was doing it feverishly found that it was kind of stupid. Bow machine gun is good enough for what you need it for in a ball mount. You don't need to over-engineer these turrets. This is archaic. It's antiquated. It's even further back than the actual thing it's based off of, if that makes sense. So we do seem to have the coaxial machine gun modeled, but the game doesn't want you to use it. Because they wanted, if you're playing co-op, they wanted to give the second player that independent turret to be able to do machine gun stuff so that the two of you could operate a tank together. They modeled the coaxial machine gun. Why can't you use the coaxial machine gun? It would be way more efficient, way safer. Driver's position is a really interesting one because this is a tank that is controlled entirely by one person. There is zero precedent for a one-man tank that I know of. There has been a debate going on forever in tank communities about how many crew members you should have in a tank. After World War I in particular, there were the kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum. You had the British with their land ships and the Germans with the A7V that had crews of 6, 7, 8, sometimes more. And then you had the French with the Renault FT, which was a two-man tank. After World War I, the French in particular are really juggling around with how many men should be required to crew a tank. Less men to crew a tank means more tanks. There is, as far as I know, no modern tank or tank ever in history that was successfully able to be operated entirely by one man. Chieftain brings up that the T-23 could have been operated by one man, and even he says theoretically.
T-23 had an electric drive, which was, in theory, wonderful. It would spin on a dime, it would go backwards as fast, it would go forwards. Very mobile. You could control the entire tank. In theory, this tank could drive and fight with one man. In theory. I mean, you wouldn't want to.
Doesn't look very comfortable either. It's an extremely cramped driver's position. Your legs, you would be so fatigued so quickly. We have tillers, we have gas pedals, we have LCD screens, but it looks decently futuristic and decently complicated enough to just be like, I don't know what that means. It looks futuristic. I just assume that it works.
Enforcement!
So getting to see the Scorpion in action now, let's talk for a little bit about the cannon on the Scorpion. I do know that it is a 90mm rifled cannon that fires God knows what. If I'm not mistaken, armament, M512 smoothbore. Oh, so it is a smoothbore, 90mm tungsten, and canister rounds. Canister rounds, that's actually quite fun. Primary weapon is also equipped with an auto-loading feed system. Yep. M80C is not ordinarily equipped with a coaxial machine gun in its turret. Big mistake. So my mistake, it's not rifled. It is a smoothbore cannon, so at least they got that right. But either way, it's a 90mm cannon, which, in keeping up with the theme of the Scorpion, it is an outdated cannon. It's interesting that they're taking real-life calibers and using that, so again, they have inspiration. But a 90mm cannon for a main battle tank is very small. Nowadays, modern tanks have 120, at the very least 105. 90mm cannons exist on things like light tanks nowadays. For some reason, the first 90mm cannon that comes to my mind is the 90 put on the Brazilian upgrade of the Stuart. Don't ask me why, but also, interestingly, a 90mm cannon can be found on the AMX-13. So, coincidence? I think not. We're getting to kind of see, again, one of the typical things that we see in video game and movie tanks, where every single round we fire is an explosive type ammunition. It's blowing up, it's destroying vehicles with explosive damage. Now, they could be using a high explosive warhead. I mentioned again in the Rhino video, either high explosive anti-tank, heat, high explosive squash head. But I believe in the Halo wiki, they say that the Scorpion fires a tungsten core ammunition. Heat and HESH are both chemical ammunitions that don't have tungsten cores. They have shape charge cores. It's something that I don't think the developers thought about. I think again, you're trying to balance that gameplay aspect of that. You want it to look cool, you want it to be fun, you want to be able to just, in video games, explosion does more damage than bullets, so tank fire explosives. Needless to say, in real life, that's not true. So it's heat, but it's probably not heat. This tank obviously has an auto-loading mechanism. I would very much expect it to. I think there's a weird stigma especially in Western tank culture, that autoloaders are trash. They're unreliable, they're too complicated, this, that, the other. But it really depends on what kind of autoloading system that you're using. For instance, the autoloading system on the French AMX-13 is very good. In fact, French autoloaders overall are quite good. Some of you may or may not know that the Leclerc uses an autoloader. The French really have autoloader technology down pretty well. Autoloaders are very nice if you get them right. For instance, a lot of old Russian tanks have a really stupid autoloader system, notoriously with the carousel design. The ammunition is all located in a carousel at the bottom of the turret ring, and then the arm reaches down into the carousel and grabs the next round out of the carousel, throws it into the breech. Boom, Bob's your uncle, you're ready to go. The carousel design is nice because, you know, all the ammo is right there and all the arm has to do is reach down, grab it, pick it up, throw it in the breech. The carousel design is really bad because all of your ammunition is completely exposed under the turret of your tank. On the center of mass, you will see, especially with what's been going on in Ukraine right now, a lot of footage of Russian tanks that get hit and the turret blows right off, sometimes hundreds of feet in the air. The West has different ideas. For instance, specifically, the AMX-13 had a little bulge on the rear of the turret that had ammunition revolvers. They were quite literally cylinders of 6 or so, I believe, shells revolve, and the autoloading system would feed that into the cannon. That ammunition detonates, it's at the very least in its own separate area on the bustle of the turret, means that the ammunition would be relatively away from the crew if it exploded. Western tanks are typically designed to accommodate for things like that, and even the Leclerc, which has its autoloading system, the Leclerc's autoloader has 2 blowout panels that can vent out ammunition cook-off. Also, for a modern autoloading system, quite exceptionally fast. For a reload rate, I mean, this must be 3 or 4 seconds. I don't know of any autoloader mechanism that can do it quite that fast. Future technology, I'm sure they have really advanced autoloaders. Okay, yeah. I actually sort of forgot about this. On the tracks, we get a much nicer look at the VVSS suspension system they've gone with. It's modeled incorrectly. VVSS suspension, again, it's a bogie system, so you have 2 road wheels and then the bogie in the middle, and then you'd have a gap, and then 2 more road wheels with another bogie system. Whereas this, it seems they have road wheel, bogie springs, road wheel, bogie springs, road wheel, bogie springs, road wheel. Which, I guess there's technically no reason why you couldn't custom design a set of VVSS to be this way. I would imagine there would be a lot of really weird play. That spring in the middle, and then the 2 arms that reach out, and the road wheels clamp onto that, and allows those 2 arms with the connected to that vertical spring, the road wheels roll up and down on those actuating arms. So if you have one road wheel that has an arm coming off to one set and then another arm going to another, bouncing that road wheel up and down on 2 actuated arms like that, I guess you could do it, but I don't know if it would reap any benefits or if it would make things more complicated. But it's a bit cursed seeing this, because that is not how VVSS is supposed to be. We do kind of get a sense of how they've mounted it, actually. There does seem to be like an above bracket that is clamping on to the bogie itself. So the mounting system is maybe not as implausible as I thought. Also now we've seen damage to the engine. If the engine really is in a position where the engine on fire is having smoke or fire come out of the vents off the sides and on the back. It's a pretty big engine. That's a humongous engine, which does make sense. I mean, the 2500s, and you need the power to be able to lug this beast around. My question with this engine is where it's located. We have an interesting setup because it's a one-man tank. We have the front of the tank is kind of nothing, and then we have the crew compartment in the middle, and then at the back we have the engine / the turret, where the turret's auto-loading mechanism feeds ammunition from, unless there's somewhere on the turret for ammunition to be stowed, and I don't see any on the Scorpion. The Scorpion has an oscillating turret, but it doesn't seem to have any space for ammunition stowage, so I would wonder if it has to pull it up through the hull. Because directly below the turret is the engine, so there's no ammo there. Or if there is, then why? Unless it's in the cheeks. Ammunition potentially could fit in those triangular, sort of leopard-style cheek emplacements that we have, which are very much there to make the Scorpion look like a Scorpion, I would imagine, but also you maybe could fit ammo there? I don't think so. I would be curious to see an X-ray diagram of a Scorpion tank to see where they explain the ammunition is stowed. So now that we're kind of done with the physical inspection, I do want to mention and discuss a little bit some of the doctrinal use of the Scorpion. So, affix your ties, get your glasses, everybody. Going into the Halo Wiki and doing a little bit of research, the Scorpion is officially regarded as a main battle tank. This is an interesting concept that I'm going to juggle here with you. I don't think it is. For one big reason, the Halo Scorpion is droppable from a Pelican. It's air deployable. That kind of speaks volumes about several characteristics of the tank. First of all, the tank has to be incredibly light to be able to be flown in with a Pelican. You could argue, hey, this is the 2550s, 2500s. They could have some really advanced and sophisticated aircraft technology for the Pelican. Maybe it speaks more to the capabilities of the Pelican than it does the Scorpion. I'm not so sure. The Scorpion is a very large vehicle, so to be able to airdrop it off a Pelican like that, it needs to be quite light. So for a main battle tank, already a little bit arguable. Secondly, small gun. And thirdly, its general resemblance, in my opinion, to the AMX-13, which leans it all towards maybe not particularly a light tank, but then again, this is the 2550s. Who knows what their definitions of a light tank is? We do know that the Grizzly does exist. We played Halo Wars, the Grizzly, which has 2 cannons. We know that there are alternate tanks out there. I think that is the niche that the Scorpion should fill. In Halo lore, it's a main battle tank. In the games, it's used as the premier main tank of the UNSC. However, I personally think it would fit much better as a light air deployable tank, despite its size. I think if it was a little bit smaller, it would be actually quite good for that role. And part of that comes with the technology. It's quite funny to me how this tank, being from the 2500s, is using technologies that were outdated even in World War II. Suspension system, out of date by the end of World War II, out of date by the middle of World War II. Independently rotating hull machine gun turret, went away quite quickly. 90mm cannon, by modern standards, is very outdated. That's a cannon you would see on a light tank. Could you squeeze a lot of penetration out of a 90mm cannon? Yeah, definitely, but for today's purposes, for a main battle tank, you need something bigger. The Scorpion really ends up being a very, very odd mixture of some technologies like the autoloader system or the being crewed by a single person that you have to say like, hey, this takes place in the future. We can't really say that this would or wouldn't work because who knows what kind of technology they have. But then it's also got a lot of elements that are, hey, this is something that definitely existed and is no longer being used because it's out of date, even by today's standards. I think the Scorpion tank, should it be put into service with any military today, right now, a bad tank. I don't think it would work. However, it's fucking sick. It looks really cool. It looks really unique. And I mean, it's Halo. I mean, come on. We all love Halo. So I'm quite torn on the Scorpion. In terms of realism factor, it's a complete wash. I think there's practically nothing redeeming about the Scorpion. There's definitely nothing on the Scorpion that makes me say, hey, that's really cool, and that's probably the direction that tanks are going, except for maybe being crewed by a single man. However, I think it's a badass tank, and I really like looking at it. And it is definitely probably one of my favorite sci-fi tanks of all time. So, with all that being said, I just want to say thank you guys so much again for watching the video, and if you really liked what you saw, then go ahead, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what I got right, let me know what I got wrong, and let me know what tanks you guys would like to see me react to in the comments below. We might move on into more real tanks that actually existed, rather than having to jump around and mess with these fictional tanks. Otherwise, my name is Ed320. This is a channel about tanks and how much I fucking love them. If you also love tanks as much as I do, then stick around, check out the podcast, or check out my live streams if you want to get to know a little bit more about me myself. Join my Discord if you want to get to know some fellow like-minded tank enthusiasts such as yourself and myself. But otherwise, that just about does it for me, so thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Armor and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK. Hey, man.